Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pyramid 4. I'm here with lovely Nasreen. Today, you may have heard in the past people asking questions while I'm in trance. And I have these interlocutors, so you don't see. Fortunately, you are able to see my friend, the lovely Nasreen. And she'll be asking the questions today. Now, Nasreen gave me the idea of speaking to Rumi today and asking Rumi these questions. So Rumi hopefully will be the one who channels anything that happened, but we're going to ask Ruby to be there. I'm curious too, like, what is it that you really like about the poet Rumi?
My father is a big time fan of Rumi, and he likes to read the poems of Rumi in the original language. And I have personally written a story about my father reading Rumi, so it's a very personal connection.
Uh-huh.
And I also just connect with the spirit of the messages in the poetry, the humor and the wisdom, and
Mhm.
so this is a dream come true.
Great. Oh, terrific. And if you guys have not checked out Rumi, read his poem. We were just reading one. Is it The Guest House?
Hmm?
Uh,
Yes.
and they're really profound and deep. They're the kind of things that you wind up thinking about for a long time. Beautiful spirit. Was Rumi Persian?
I believe so, yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start process of contact.
My question is about my need to feel stable and secure
Mhm.
at this time in my life. And to be very specific and practical, I had a desk job for decades, and I am now embarking on the next chapter of my career, which is relatively unknown, but
Mhm.
very much in the creative field. And so it feels unstable. It feels risky. It
Mhm.
feels the great unknown. It feels like the great unknown. And it's totally a new feeling for me. And so this word stability keeps coming back to me. And I feel that if I can understand, maybe how to find stability in non-traditional ways, not the 9 to 5 that I used to have, this can really help me in the next chapter of my career.
Very well. We know your question, and we would have you take a look at this image. Here we are. There is a barrel underneath us, but we are standing on a piece of wood and balancing on the barrel. If you are feeling this, any of you viewers, this is exactly what it is like to be taking a risk. It is exactly how many people feel at this time because there is such a great risk to failure. For example, in certain places, you cannot have healthcare if you do not have a job. This is a great stress. So it is normal to have these feelings. If we look back at our cultural history, the original people needed to make enough food for the winter, and this organic need to feel instability is exactly rational. It is precisely how we should feel. The question that you have specifically before us is, we would ask that you notice, although it is difficult to stand on a barrel as it is moving about, it is exciting. And we would want you to notice that if it were not risky, it would not be exciting or challenging. If it were not risky and exciting, then you would not be able to enjoy this. So as you go forward and do this, one thing you must notice is how it is stimulating you, how it is interesting to you, also how it is truly good work. That is, you are taking a risk, and as you take this risk, you are learning more than if you did not take the risk. As to how can you balance somewhat in the imbalance, we would ask that you have to trust a good deal. You must go to meditation as much as possible and trust. You must balance with nature, and in the meditation, ask if there are things that you can do to fix your work or do some positive thinking or etc., etc. You can go to spirit and request for assurance, You will feel more secure if you do this. And this would not be a bad idea. So some of the guides that you know, for example, Abraham Hicks, have asked that people recognize how their inner thoughts, their inner world, and their emotions change the outcomes. That is, if you were to sit down and use the meditation also to produce good outcomes, that is allowed. That is, spirits do not think that you are greedy or materialistic merely because you are asking for this. They see that you are learning, you're making a connection. You're connecting to spirit in a way that is practically helpful, and this is as it should be. We would say also that rituals work. You can do money rituals, and they will bring, first of all, a security in your heart, and second of all, outlying security. And you might think of the connection. If you feel more secure, more certain in your heart because of some meditations, you are more likely to meet with success. That is, people will perceive you as successful and not a desperate person. People will perceive you as someone who is helpful and wise and knows what they are doing. Even if you have one nickel in the bank, if you present as a millionaire and people see you as a millionaire, they will make deals with a millionaire. That is just the way it is. And it is also an opening for you. Realize that you are learning new ways to make money. And we would suggest that rather than see this as a problem, you see this as a marvelous opportunity to expand on your abilities. It is certainly helpful if you have abilities in the past on which you relied. That is, you learned a good deal, you know how to manage certain things, you know how to manage your own levels of stress, and you bring those lessons into the new world. We can tell you there are so many opportunities, but the easiest opportunity is the self. That is the closest opportunity. That is the one that you can access on a daily basis. It is one that is always consistent despite economic changes. It is a sort of practice in trust. It is a practice to maintain levels of trust and belief in the universe. It is always helpful if you believe that the universe is on your side, and this might take a bit of work, and it does take a risk to know, am I crazy or am I relying on the universe? This is a question that all should ask as you engage, but each sort of permutation, that is, each slight change that you would make in this approach will be a certain learning. Even if it is not as successful, there will be learning. And if you can approach it merely as a learning, merely as being connected to wealth in a personal way, in a different way, rather than a paycheck way, learning that it is an exciting way because it is directed by you. It is full of anxiety as well, but mostly it is about you seeing your powers. It is about you expanding your powers. It is about you trusting in yourself and powers. The more an individual trusts in themselves and their powers, and this we mean in sincerity rather than as a sort of facade, the more likely they are to succeed. For it is the energy around you which is success, and it is the success that permeates. So others who wish to be successful and who know what success looks like, they will connect with you on the level of success. You will walk through the world with a feeling of success, and success will attach itself to you. Again, people will see you in such a way, and events will occur around you. This is not to say that it is only passive. You just must think of success. You do have to do things to achieve that success. But imagine that you meditate and you get an idea for success in the morning. First, you are meditating, then you are getting the idea, and then you must do your best to impose that idea out into the universe and to watch it as a person, like a child, and watch and see if it needs a bit of correction, a bit of learning, a bit of changing. You watch it benevolently. Much of success and balance is your attitude. And when you are working with your attitude, it is incredibly important to constantly reestablish the attitude. Things will happen in your life that will throw you off, and you must climb back onto the path that you are on of success. It requires correction. It requires that you correct yourself without harming yourself. It requires that you allow mistakes and do not take them personally, but to look at the mistakes and make the changes. The universe is sending the mistake for you to make now when it is less important than when you have $50 million, and a mistake will be extremely important.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yes. And please let us know if there are further questions about that, or as you wish.
Well, it was interesting. You said that I should value the excitement of this moment.
Yes.
And is that as opposed to desiring more stability? Or could both of those things be happening at the same time and helping me?
They are happening at the same time, and they are helping you. Your ability to adjust is helping your stability because you are learning how to adjust. And as you are learning how to adjust, you are assuring that in the future you will have stability. Let us take an example. Perhaps you figure out something about the development of your website. Dave is doing some work on this right now. He is not very familiar with technical issues. He is looking at certain words and how that can be used, etc. And as he is doing this, it is rather interesting. He is surprised that this topic is somewhat interesting to him. But as he learns these things, he will then apply them, and he will always know about these word rules. I think it is called SEO rules that bring information to people using certain keywords. So yes, the stability is achieved through the excitement. The excitement brings you to the table, and as you work on the excitement, it creates stability.
Okay, so speaking of the excitement, I have goals related to my career that I would like to accomplish, but I am very aware that I don't currently, at this time, have everything I need to do what I envision. And so I think I need to just start with whatever I have. But I struggle with that. I struggle with beginning a project when I know that I don't have all the pieces in place yet. Could you help me with that?
Yes. Think of it as like a present, which you are not able to open for some time. Let's suppose that you are anticipating your birthday and someone has left a birthday present on the table for you to open, but you may not open it until your birth date. So you wait and you think and you envision, but on the day that you open the present, there is a sort of surprise there. We would ask that you view these choices, these opportunities, these possibilities, these decisions of yours as like a birthday present. When you open it up, you do not know exactly until it's completely open what it is. You will not know the venture that you are creating until it is created. That is, until it is created, it is just an idea. It might be that you need some adjustments. You might need to adjust the website, for example, before it actually works. But first you have to create the website, see its errors, and then correct. So when you are looking at these opportunities, do not expect that at the moment you discover the opportunity and attempt to employ the opportunity, that it will work instantly. It will not. It is purposeful that at the beginning of the opening, there are flaws and mistakes, again, so you can self-correct. This is a sort of way of understanding this might be when you are making an attempt, you must first make the attempt, but do not be too attached to that attempt. Look at the attempt merely as a sort of attempt to fly. The Wright brothers were creating the airplane, and they did not achieve the airplane on the first try. They had to go on many quite dangerous missions where the planes were not successful. Perhaps they crashed and injured the pilot. It was extremely dangerous as they were doing this. However, they took this risk. It is fortunate that such a risk will not be equally dangerous for you. Let us remember that if this does not work out, you can always find another job. You are intelligent enough and savvy enough to find another job. You will not become a homeless person. There are friends, etc. So it is helpful to calm yourself down and consider the worst case scenario. And when you consider the worst case scenario, agree that it is not death. It is not the end. Then make your prototype and put it before the world. And do not worry if it is critiqued or unsuccessful. It is merely a prototype. It is a way of you trying. It is a way of you considering. It is not going to be like a sort of novel which you write and is immediately published. The novel might need to be shopped. You might need to change bits and pieces of the novel. You might need to try a new agent. There are many ways that you need to adjust. Don't take these things personally. Put out what you have, your best offer, and then see how it needs adjustment. And as you do that, do not be so attached to the original. As you put out the original, let it be that you know that it is flawed. You are merely discovering how it is flawed. What we say is, do the work and put it out there. Put it out there, however, with not so many attachments that if it is not working, if it is a total failure, you don't feel personally devastated. Do your best and then rest. Allow the product to create itself in a sense. Does this make sense?
This does make sense. This is very helpful to me.
We're
So thank you. You mentioned the word attachment a few times. And so this is something I've been wanting to ask you about. The relationship of the artist to her art. So I am a writer. That's one of my artistic pursuits. And when I write a story, in the moment when I'm writing it, I get a lot of joy from it. Nothing could tear me away from the process. I love it. And then as soon as it's finished, very soon after it's finished, I don't think I have the right relationship to it, because either I never want to read it again, or I feel somehow I'm too attached to the art, and I even have a fear that if all the stories were stolen or they got fear, I think that I would cease to exist as the artist. And so what I want to ask you is, how can I know that it is enough to exist as an artist and do the work without worrying so much about the art that's already been created?
This is a good question. And it is interesting that recently Dave has watched a movie. This film is called Babette's Feast, and it is one that you can also read by the writer Dennison. It is one of Dave's favorite writers, and we would suggest this movie to you, for it states exactly as you have stated, that the artist is always the artist. The artist is never poor, for the artist can always produce something beautiful, even if they are living in a street. So we would first say that you are correct. You are always an artist. You are always connecting to those words. One recommendation that we have for you or others is know the stages of your writing. Let us ask you this. At the state of writing where you are sort of in love with the process, what is it like? Is it like channeling?
Yes.
Therein lies your answer. There is a time for channeling. There is a time for editing. There is a time for evaluating and showing it to others. We would suggest that you be very conscious at the time when you are channeling. Know that you are channeling, and then put on a different hat, sit in a different seat, look at it in a different direction, and say, now we are editing. And if we are editing, we are going to be frank and honest. editing does not mean we are giving up the gift. It is not like every word comes as a sort of gospel and must be included. This is just a sort of amorphous body. It is a sort of bright cloud which is sort of settled on your page. And it is okay to go through that and make some changes. Perhaps the message is from spirit, but it is too complicated for a human to understand. Perhaps the message is clear to you, but you would prefer it as a metaphor. There is nothing wrong with interpreting in a more human, earthly form what spirit has given you. Obviously, it would be different if it were misunderstood or if you were manipulating the message from spirit for some vain personal goal. But you are not doing that. And part of your fear is of that you should not change the magic. You should not take out one word or add a single comma, because that would be disrespectful to the magic process. We would assure you that it's not. The process is magic, but it is magic and nothing more. There are other powers in the universe, the powers of discernment, the powers of knowing, although we can speak, although we can say certain words, they can be altered. We might think of Christ, for example, who used metaphor to teach others. We might think of Rumi, myself, as creating metaphors. I am sitting there, I'm receiving this information, I am inspired by the beauty of what is happening. But do not suppose that I did not edit my work. I was somewhat clear in understanding what God said to me. However, I also realized that I am a human among humans, and I must sometimes change things so that humans understand what I am saying. It is like putting on a different hat, as we have mentioned. You may literally do this and put on a sort of editorial hat, which allows you to go through this work and take or leave out things. The hat should come off, and then it could come back again later as you do your rewrites. There's a certain moment where you are a lover with spirit, and there's a certain moment where you are a doctor with spirit, and you decide what is healthful and what is not healthful in this message that has been delivered. This is all that you really need to do to approve and improve your work. It is to sort of accept that there are very different stages about the work. Though the channeling type of work might be the most satisfying, Dave still has to go and fix his website. He must respond to his emails. He must also do very mundane things to support the moments of channeling.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my next question for you is about, you were talking about this sense of purity around channeling, not feeling comfortable editing something, and so I want to ask you about collaborating with other artists, because I have worked alone for really most of my life. And I think I feel a sense of purity around that, like I don't want to disturb my artistic vision by inviting other people into the project. But I also, I just have an intuition that this is the moment when I need to collaborate. But there's some tension there for me. And I wonder if you could help me to understand, how do you collaborate with other artists while being so honest about your own artistic vision and staying true to it, representing it well?
We would ask you and all of the viewers, have you ever been tricked or cheated before? We expect that the answer for everyone is going to be yes. So you are wise to be extremely careful with whom you would share intimate moments, especially as this is material which can be stolen. So we would say, first of all, you are being wise. Everybody is being wise when they make a decision about whom they work with. It cannot be a whim. It must be that you sit down and again do some very clear meditation. See that person who you would potentially work with and consider all their actions, on a rational level, consider the things that they have done and know, and then go to them in trance or in meditation and see, do I feel good about them? You might picture such a person and say to spirit, show me what they have to offer. If they offer you an olive branch, you will know that they are interested in peace. If they offer you encyclopedias, they may offer you information. But if you are sitting in that space and you are considering that person, notice, does the energy feel broken? Does the energy feel unpleasant? Does the energy feel prickly? Does the energy feel problematic? And as you sit there and make that decision, be fair to yourself. If you truly do not get a good impression, or if you get a mediocre feeling, move on. Gently say no and move on. It is Spirit's job to send you a variety of characters, some of whom you should work with and some of whom you should not work with, because Spirit doesn't want you to be overly exposed. They do not want you to have such an easy ride that you get to someplace and you are blindsided by a thief who steals your work. So, one thing we are asking you to do is to trust yourself, trust your own intuition. We know that you personally are good at this, and we would say to everyone, they are good at this. They just don't know this yet. They must practice. They must try many times about seeing a person. So, Dave has made such a mistake before. He has worked with people that were not in everybody's best interests. He didn't listen to the signs that warned him. If you go to anyone, even before you do the intuitive work, and you look at the past, you look at things they have done and said, you observe whatever you can about them, the universe will reveal questions, things that you would like to know more about, things that you are uncertain about. We would suggest that you do this and you check in with your heart. In the beginning, this could be a 20-minute process, but if you keep practicing, it will only take a moment and you will know.
Okay. So, dear Rumi, let's say that I consider a collaboration with another artist and I meditate and I have a good feeling and I decide to go ahead and collaborate with this other person. Is there room for compromise? I guess what I'm trying to ask is it only an additive process, where you bring your full artistic self and they bring their full artistic self, and if the relationship is healthy, then there shouldn't be a whole lot of things you need to give up in terms of your vision. Is that the ideal that you're working toward? Or is it always the case that you have to modify, you have to give up a little bit of what you wanted artistically?
Yes. So, if you are collaborating with another, first of all, as we've mentioned, you must feel comfortable with that other person. As you work together, the collaboration should make it better. That is, you should be able to collaborate with that person, work through it, and after the two of you have worked on it, come up with a result that is at least satisfying. What they have said should make sense in the beginning. If there is some discomfort around it, try what they have recommended and come back to it the next day and ask yourself, does it still feel correct? Does it still feel as good as the original, or is it better? It might be that you correct it again, and then you bring it back to the person with whom you collaborate and see what they think. If it becomes a situation of deterioration, where the work keeps suffering under this person's opinion because the ideas they offer are more mediocre than yours, then you must address it and you must cease the collaboration. You
Okay.
must find out if this feels right. Again, it is a question of your heart and your sense of what is right. You must know your heart. You must ask. You must be honest. It is more likely that the person will give you some ideas. You will combine the ideas. You will think about it. You will take them apart. You will come back with better ideas, having been critiqued, having left the work in a somewhat still unsatisfactory situation, that you will be re-inspired to make something even better. If the collaboration process proceeds in such a way, this is a good collaboration. If the collaboration is proceeding in a way where you always feel like it is a compromise, like it is not particularly good work, then you may have a problem. Keep in mind the person may be coming from a different perspective. Perhaps you are a writer for magazines, but you are collaborating with a writer for television. The writer for television should know more than you about television if you are working in that way, as in for television. And then you might defer to them to some degree, but you would still go back to your original self, your original heart. You would still go back to a space of balance and ask yourself, is he right or is he wrong? Is she right or is she wrong? Or is there a better way, even better than they have suggested? There may be certain points where you defer more, perhaps with an extremely well-versed person in such a topic. There are also times when a very well-versed person is not a good collaborator for you because they simply do not understand or get along with your work. We understand this is unusual because probably you are collaborating and they know your work. Anytime you must end a collaboration, notice it, notice why, and do not punish anyone. Understand that the collaboration simply didn't work and find out what reasons they are. And this will help you with others. They will be more useful in the collaboration because you will have fine-tuned your ability to find those with whom you are collaborating. The process is one we will tell you it's important to notice. It is also important for you to notice how you are truly feeling. Take time, take a moment and see if this is the right person for you, if the changes they made are sufficient, if you need to take the changes a little bit further. Whatever the condition, you must, to some degree, trust yourself and know that you are learning how to trust yourself, how to trust your intuition. Every day that you spend considering, meditating, looking, trusting, observing how you are truly feeling will be informative.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You know, this word improv has become very important to me. Improvisation is something that I do in dance. I do a partner dance that is improvised, and I'm also taking improv classes related to drama. And the reason I bring it up is because, I feel like this is a lesson I'm life about being willing to just show up to the moment and trust that I am enough. I know enough and I'm able enough to respond to the moment well. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the concept of improvisation and how that can help artists.
Yes. So we have to mention, as Dave stands here on the sideline, he is showing us all those times where he had to improvise. So there were times where he was a beginning teacher, had no school books in a foreign country before there were the internet. He would spend perhaps hours preparing a lesson, and the lesson was finished in only 5 minutes. And he had to improvise for 50 minutes. This was extremely difficult and it was extremely useful. He is very good now at improvising, and he is not so nervous standing in front of people and improvising. He could be a comic should he choose to do so. And we would point out to you that that is exactly what you are doing. You are trusting, you are learning, you are getting better at improvising. But we also want to point out something significant. When you are doing this improvisation, you are in the light. You are allowing, you are becoming in a certain way. You are reaching a state of being where you feel free, you feel golden and beautiful. And we can see you there looking very golden and beautiful. We would like you to know that is exactly how others perceive you when you are doing this kind of improvisational work. And it is very satisfying. It is satisfying for you to be in the moment. It is satisfying for others to be in the moment, just as improv is very satisfying, both for the actor and for the audience. Notice the satisfaction and enjoyment and the pleasure that happens as you do this sort of dance, the dance that we all do when we create.
Yes, that really rings true, that there is a particular kind of joy and light that surrounds improvisation and willingly stepping into an unknown situation. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's just always so difficult. I mean, I think a lot of people have this experience, even though we know it's a good thing and we know it's necessary business-wise and art-wise, and there's so many wonderful things that come from it, and yet it feels so vulnerable. It feels it feels scary, I guess is the word. And could you just talk a little bit more about how to accommodate those feelings of fear around the vulnerability of improvisation?
We are happy to do so. Unfortunately, first, we must make you all feel a little bit sad. For a moment, we would ask all of you to look back into your life and consider just for a moment the first time you were humiliated, the first time you were embarrassed. We will only ask you to do this for a moment. See yourself at that time when you are embarrassed. And as you experience that moment, just for a moment, we will now ask you to dismiss that moment. Dismiss the moment where you were first embarrassed and say that was a place and a moment in time. We would then invite you to consider every time you put yourself out there, there is always a fear of re-experiencing that moment of embarrassment or humiliation. All people function like this. That moment of first humiliation is a prototype for all the moments of humiliation. It may be that this happened to you when you were a small child, but you still have exactly the same feelings when you knock over a wine glass at a dinner party and ruin the tablecloth. It is no different, except you have grown up enough to manage that emotion somewhat better. And you are with people, hopefully, who are kind enough to tell you not to worry about the tablecloth. We will find another one. So as you notice these moments of embarrassment, rather than consider the embarrassment, see how the embarrassment occurred to you once. Reassure yourself that no matter what happens, the embarrassment will never be as bad as that embarrassment, the first embarrassment. See that you have survived that first embarrassment. Nobody remembers it except for you. It is now no longer important, except as a sort of memory. It's not a bad idea to go back to that child and soothe them. Spend a little time seeing yourself at that age being embarrassed for the first time. And as the adult, go to them and say, Don't worry, it is nothing. We will forget about it. You're just learning to be a human. All people get embarrassed. You do not need to dwell here. And as you reassure that child that things will be okay, you will be better on your interior self.
Thank you. Earlier you gave this image of balancing on a barrel, and my mind keeps returning to this in relation to improvisation, because I think there may be a misconception that in the improvising state you're coming unprepared. It's kind of an irresponsible way to show up to the world. And I feel that I'm trying to balance these two things, where on the one hand, I want to be professional, I want to be prepared, I want to do my due diligence, and the people I interact with, I want them to know that they can trust that I will give them my best. But on the other hand, the joy of just showing up to the moment and letting the chips fly seems very powerful, and I don't want to miss that. But could you talk a little bit about the dance between the two?
Yes. So let us suppose that presently, before the improv, you are walking yourself through a certain process. You are preparing yourself psychologically. You are balancing yourself out. You are confronting your fears. There is a good deal of self-talk. It is sort of ritual, a ritual in which you do some work. Maybe you do a great deal of work. Maybe that work is harder than the preparations that an accountant would make before they go into their job. So do not suppose that you are not preparing. You are preparing. It would be helpful if you consider this a very specific ritual. So before Jim Carrey goes out and asks, he spends a good deal of time in this sort of preparation. Perhaps he repeats certain words. Perhaps he looks in the mirror and makes certain faces. Perhaps he turns around 3 times in the circle and says, aha. He is ritualizing this preparation, because each time he does this, it has a better and more certain effect. So choose the preparation, choose the ritual that prepares you, and know that you are not really unprepared. You are preparing for spontaneity, if you will.
That makes sense. And so then there's another balance I'm trying to strike, and this is related to humor. And I know when I read your writing, I think it's very funny, and at the same time, it's dead serious. And I mean, I take it seriously. And so when I am writing and the other types of art that I do, a lot of it is on the surface humor. It's humor. Um, and there's always a part of me that wants to defend it and to say, but it's not casual. I'm really, really serious. But the way that I'm expressing the serious message is sort of in and of itself very casual. Conflict in myself. I feel like I have to sort of apologize for joking about certain things that should be serious, or for expressing myself in a certain way. And I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit, the dichotomy between seriousness and humor.
Yes, great topic. So we sometimes have a process where, let us begin like this. Often, Dave has experienced a great deal of humor from his guides, from spirits, etc. We, shall we say, can be quite funny. We have many years of wisdom behind us, and we enjoy jokes and humor. We apologize for the feedback on the machine here. The feedback is because of the energies of the planet at this time. So to continue, when you make a joke, you are with spirit. When everybody in the room is laughing together, they are very much elevated towards spirit. if you have a political argument in dead seriousness with another, you can be enemies, but quickly make friends with that enemy by making a joke that is funny enough that it takes them away from the moment of anger and brings them into laughter. It brings the two people together. In a sense, this comedy is extremely serious. You can look at many leaders, for example, Winston Churchill, who used humor to instruct others. You can see other leaders convincing even their enemies of something because they make a joke that is engaging enough, that doesn't put others down, a joke that everybody laughs at. So, John F. Kennedy once was told that certain people found him inadequate. Kennedy responded to his audience, "I'm just guessing most of those people would be Republicans." Let us repeat, most of those people were Republicans. Everyone, Republican and Democrat, laughed. And the moment of levity was carried forward. It made him more savvy than it would if he was a very serious person. So sometimes it is the case that Bernie Sanders is perceived as being too serious. There are many who would like him to be more appealing in that department. There is a relationship. So think for a moment of gallows humor. People in a deadly serious situation, perhaps their life is to end in only a few minutes as they take a look at the guillotine. The moment where they make it humorous is helpful first of them. They are existing. It is almost like a final prayer before they pass, a gift to them and from them to the humanity around them. As they are making such a joke, the others anticipating the guillotine, they also perceive it as a gift, as a way for a moment to stop fixing on the horrors and enjoy the laughter. This is a sort of gift, if you will, as we have said. Each time you elevate with humor, you are instructing people, first of all, how to have more levity, as is often used in this regard. You are instructing people how others can come together on an emotional basis, just as they are separated on an emotional basis. There is nothing wrong with humor, although in some situations, some humor may not be appropriate. For example, it may not be appropriate for children to watch some kind of humorous acts because they are too young to conceive and understand how to use such jokes appropriately. So you do have to take your audience into consideration.
Yes. Yes. I wonder if we could talk. So we've talked about humor, and I feel emotionally very comfortable talking about that. But, you know, in preparation for this meeting with you, I spoke with my guides, and I felt that I was encouraged to talk to you about sadness and heartbreak, and I resisted it. I didn't want to bring it up because I felt uncomfortable. I thought, well, I'm going to meet Rumi, and I don't want to be a downer, but I just want to be faithful to that and bring it up. And I want to ask you, how can we have honest conversations about pain and loss without getting lost in the pain and loss? I don't want anyone to get lost there forever, but it seems like a really important thing to be honest about and to talk about.
Yes, sometimes when things are sad, this is a way to bring humans together. Let us think of a funeral. At a funeral, all the people that loved a certain person are in the same room. They are connecting in a very loving way. In general, at such a funeral, even if you meet someone who you do not particularly like, you will take that moment to be kind to one another. you will agree that you are both feeling sorrow. Even if you disagree about everything else, you are connecting in sorrow. So we would show you there is some value, social value in sorrow. It does connect you. Sorrow also motivates you. If you see something that is heartbreaking, you will strive to change it. Perhaps you will be sorry, feeling sorrow for many people. And as you feel this sorrow, you will become a group achieving certain goals to overcome the sorrow. So we may think of sorrow in this way. Understand that there is a moment when the funeral is over to go home and have some private sorrow, to spend some time perhaps crying and letting it all go, letting a higher level of understanding, incorporating the sorrow into the whole experience and understanding that it has a role and a value. But it is only one thing. It may be that at a certain point, the sorrow is overwhelming you, and it is not necessary to dwell there. The person has already passed, and this won't change. However, you can accept certain level of sorrow, know where it is and know its place, and then you can move on, go to different emotions. So there is always a way of stepping out of the river that you are in into the new river. We do not wish to suggest that you don't and shouldn't feel sorrow. You must feel this feeling, and you must feel it fully before you can move on. You cannot deny it. You must experience it, and once you have experienced it, realize that there is a time limit for that experience. Changing it is not disloyal to the one who passed. You have already felt the emotions fully. You have mourned them for a certain time. And now you must move on. Honor the person, for example, who you feel sorry for by moving on and experiencing the same joy you experience with that person. There is a role of sorrow, just as there is a role for humor and the other emotions. They must be given their place, but they do not need to rule the house forever. It is a sort of timed presidency. Imagine that a CEO has come just for an hour, the CEO of sorrow. And then when they must move out, they can be replaced with the CEO of creativity or happiness.
Okay, yeah, I like that image. That's great. I would like to ask you, this is a little bit of a different topic, about the goals that we have for ourselves. I'll give you a really personal example so everybody I think can relate. So for a while, I thought that I wanted to get married and have children. And then when I was very honest with myself, it it occurred to me that this was something that I had absorbed from society and maybe from my culture and parents, but that in fact, I did not really want this for myself. And so I use that as an example because I want to ask you, how can we discern whether the goals that we have in life are really actually what we want, or whether it's some kind of programming from so many years ago that is just running? That's what I want to ask you.
Good question. So again, we must refer to Dave, who has always wanted to have children. Obviously, he cannot give birth, but he presumed that he would adopt. Had Dave had $1 million, he would have adopted as many children as he could have afforded. That is, he would have adopted 100 children because he is extremely fond of children. But this would have been a mistake. Had he adopted even one child in the last 20 years, this would have become his burden. He would have had difficulty affording the child. He would have had difficulty experiencing his goals. And recently, as it was pointed out, his partner is not sure about children. And as he reconsidered it, it came to him that he would not be able to travel. There would be difficulties with his career. It would be satisfying in some ways, but unsatisfying in others. So this is what one might do. It might be useful to reevaluate, to see where he wishes to go. You might do the same. Is this really my desire? Is this been important to me? Check in your heart. This is what we will continue to refer to. Just check your heart and trust what it says.
Okay. So trusting yourself, it seems to me that this is related to being comfortable with a position of power. This is something I'm working on in life because in the past, I think I've identified as someone who follows the rules and follows the instructions of other people. And now I would like to change things up, and I would like to make my own rules, and I would like to decide my own destiny. And furthermore, I would like to have a vision that's inspiring to other people. So I'd really like to turn the tables. But I know that I need to trust myself more in able to be an effective leader, to be in a position of power effectively. And so could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So what you are experiencing is a step-by-step process. One is not born a leader, one becomes a leader. One makes mistakes, one corrects, one moves back. And this is the difficulty. This is the difference between someone who leads and someone who does not lead. That is, the leader accepts that they have made errors and moves on. They observe the errors, consider the errors, and do not take them too personally. They do not make an error and say, I'm a failure. They make the mistake, learn from the mistake, they incorporate the mistake, and move on. They are improvising, as you have noted, much of the time. They are standing in a sort of spotlight when they are negotiating. They are asked to learn on their feet in that improvisational way that you spoke of. And as they are learning on their feet, they walk away with success and failure and understand why. Perhaps it was not a good deal, and so I failed. Perhaps it was a case that the person was not a good personality match. Perhaps it was the case that it's simply not the right deal at the right time. Do your best with this. Do your best to lead. As you continue, certain ideas will fall away and other ideas will become more prominent. So, as a school teacher, Dave at some point had to stop being friends with all of the students, and he had to become strict. There was one day where he made a sort of joke where he utilized a basket to have everyone put in their telephones so that they would not use the phones in class. He put them on the spot. So he made a sort of game out of it. Give your phone a name. And now it is time for the phone to go on a vacation. He then passed a box around, which was called the photel, and the students were obliged to put their phones in the photel. First, it was amusing, but it also put the students on the spot. Would they refuse to participate in the teacher's game? They could not really refuse. In that situation, he wasn't taking away their phone. He was asking them to participate in the class, and they did. There were other problems. There were other times where he tried to do this, and it did not work out very well. There were face-to-face showdowns with the students. Had he started the semester more strictly, Had the students been a little bit more afraid of him, he would not have had the same problems. In leadership, there is a belief in self. There is a trust that you will make errors and correct them. There is a trust that you are worthy of leading. One thing that a leader does is spend a bit of time convincing themselves that they are worthy of leading. They convince themselves that even if they make mistakes, they will survive and they will learn and move on. Leadership is a sort of game. It is also a school. And if you accept that it is a game and a school, it will be easier to lead.
That's very helpful. I mean, I used to think of, I just thought there were people who were leaders and people who were followers, but yes, it's a game and it's a process. All right. Well, speaking of games, I find your poetry to be playful. And I think there's a lot of power in play, but then also, I don't know if it gets the respect it deserves in society. And so I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the usefulness of play, the practicality of play.
Without play, there is no work. That is, if there isn't a moment to play, the work will suffer. It will not be as good. It won't have the feeling of spontaneity. This is especially true for an artist. If an artist is like a monk living in a cave, they may have some difficulty because they do not interact with other humans. They will have perhaps an advantage in that they are interacting with themselves and spirit more in their silent work. So we hope this answers your question, but perhaps you want to pose it again.
My question is, what is the practicality of intentionally incorporating into your career, into your work, which is normally, the workplace usually think, well, it should be very serious, and play is something for younger people and children, and so I would like to understand better the usefulness of intentionally injecting play or making space for play in spaces where it's normally not welcome.
Indeed. So you have heard of certain team building exercises. These are very useful because it makes the group more cohesive. It allows for them to understand and work for themselves, work with each other better. So there is no question in any CEO's mind that play has a role. It just helps if it is conscious, if you are knowing this. So there was an office where Dave worked and people got along extremely well. They were very friendly and funny. And because of this, it created a sort of office cohesion, meant others could seek each other for help. It is very useful to have these trustworthy and friendly connections.
Thank you. I have a question about you, about your time on Earth and your writing. And I am just so curious. Many people write, many people make art, but I think very few people's art lasts for centuries and maintains the level of popularity and like a feeling of modernity that yours does. And I wonder if you could help us to understand what is it about your art that made it sort of timeless, and how is it that even today it feels modern, it feels relevant, and it's just incredibly loved and popular at this time still?
I was very fortunate. I had a life in the right place and the right time, even though there were certain limitations. Let us say that you live in a culture which limits the kind of artistic expression. And you must force yourself to work within a certain limited experience. This does, in some ways, alter the art and make it more original. That was my situation. My work was narrowed. It compelled me to speak within certain lines, just as a language is limiting to art. So when I worked, I was wealthy enough, for example, I was in the right place at the right time, but I also had the correct limits for me. Had Michelangelo lived at that time, he would not have been able to do the same kind of work. He would have been more of an engineer at that time, or my time was not exactly the same time. My country was not Italy. It was a different kind of Renaissance. So keep in mind, this was work I was supposed to do, and I was channeling. I was channeling in a way that people could accept. I did not call it channeling. I called it inspiration. People recognized that I was in a state of grace, that I was talking to God, if you will. So, although I did work hard and I was a vehicle, I was also very fortunate. I had the right abilities at the right time.
Thank you.
You are welcome. We would just suggest only one more question. This vehicle is becoming tired.
Yes. Well, my final question is, if you have a final thought, I mean, you've heard my line of questioning. We've had this long conversation. Thank you so much. Was there anything else that you feel that we would benefit from after having had this discussion?
Listen to music. Music will elevate you. Music will calm you. Music is much better than the other machines that you are attached to. The machines that you are attached to are bringing often negative values, negative feelings. They are causing a certain obsession with certain feelings, and that is not helpful to humans. Music, for the most part, will change and elevate you. It will change your state of being. It will connect you to others and make you happy. If you ever go to a concert, you will encounter people feeling the same things at the same time. Perhaps they are even similar. Perhaps one person is 16 and another is 60. But in that moment, they will connect. They will connect with the music because it moves them in an emotional way. Listen to music. Choose the music that is most appropriate for that time. It may be that you wish to listen to sad music so that you can feel sad and then move on. Listen to music that helps you, that inspires you, that maintains a certain level of inspiration. That is our final, let us call it a request.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and this has been such a pleasure. Thank you.
We say that you are welcome. We look forward to your success. We cease this transmission. Okay. Yeah, wow. We're going to let him go. Have a little water.
Yeah.
Always helps to ground. Yeah, look, I hope the feedback wasn't too back here.
It wasn't too bad. There were just a few moments when it cut out, but not too bad.
Okay. I'm hearing just a little bit of echo. I don't know what that's from, but never mind. We'll be fine. So let me just say to viewers, thanks so much for watching. And thanks so much, Jasmine, for doing this work. It's really, really helpful. Great questions.
It was fun, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Mm.